I never believed in love at first sight until I saw her across the crowded reception hall. One dance changed everything. Who knew my best friend's sister's wedding would lead me to risk everything I'd built? Billions in wealth, family expectations, and my carefully controlled life for a chance at real love. Have you ever wondered what it feels like when your entire world shifts in just one moment? If you want to discover how an unexpected meeting can change the course of your life forever, stay with me for the next half hour as I share my journey from lonely billionaire to a man truly in love. I checked my watch as I stepped out of my Bentley, nodding to the driver before straightening my custom tuxedo. Another weekend, another obligation. Leo had been my friend since college, before I built my tech empire, before the billions, before my name became synonymous with success. His sister Myra's wedding wasn't something I could skip, no matter how exhausted I felt from back-to-back meetings in Tokyo. The venue was stunning, a converted chateau with gardens that seemed to stretch forever, fairy lights twinkling in the trees. I smiled politely as heads turned my way. That's the thing about wealth. It creates a bubble around you. People see the money, the power, the magazine covers, but rarely the person underneath. I handed my wedding gift to an attendant and grabbed a champagne flute, preparing for an evening of small talk and feigned interest. The ceremony was set to begin in the garden. I found my seat in the second row, exchanging pleasantries with faces I vaguely recognized from Leo's birthday parties and holiday gatherings. That's when I saw her. She wasn't part of the wedding party, but she moved with purpose, camera in hand, capturing moments with an artist's eye. Her dark skin glowed in the afternoon sunlight, and she wore a simple burgundy dress that stood out among the pastels and neutrals of the other guests. Throughout the ceremony, I found my attention drifting from the bride and groom to the photographer moving quietly around the perimeter. At one point, she knelt to get a particular angle, and our eyes met just for a second. She didn't smile or look away, embarrassed like most people do when they catch me staring. Instead, she held my gaze with quiet confidence before returning to her work. The cocktail hour felt endless. I made the rounds, discussing market trends and golf scores, all while tracking her movements through the crowd. Finally, I found myself beside her at the bar. "Your camera looks serious," I said, immediately regretting such a bland opener. She laughed, a genuine sound that made me smile too. "It is. I'm Raya, friend of the bride, helping with photos as my gift." "Ethan," I said, offering just my first name, a small experiment to see if she recognized me. She didn't react, just shook my hand firmly. "Just a friend, not a professional photographer?" I asked, noticing the expert way she handled her equipment. "Actually, I own a studio downtown, but today I'm here for Mira." Her eyes sparkled. "And you? Friend of the bride or groom?" "The groom's friend from college. Leo and I go way back." When dinner began, I was disappointed to find her seated across the room, but fate intervened. During the dancing, the DJ called for everyone to join the floor, and suddenly, there she was, laughing as Leo's grandmother pulled her into the circle. I'm not sure what made me do it. I never dance at these events, but I found myself walking toward her, extending my hand. When she took it, something electric passed between us. We moved together like we'd been dancing for years. No words, just music and movement, and something I hadn't felt in years. Genuine connection. "I never dance at weddings," I admitted when the song ended. "Neither do I. I guess we both made an exception tonight." I couldn't bring myself to leave her side after that dance. As the night progressed, I found excuses to stay in Raya's orbit, offering to help carry her equipment, bringing her drinks, anything to hear more of her laugh. There was something refreshing about her directness. When I mentioned my recent acquisition of a tech startup, she asked thoughtful questions about the employees' futures rather than the price tag. She wasn't performing the familiar dance of impressed reactions I'd grown accustomed to. "So you're that Ethan?" she finally said as we sat at an abandoned table, the reception winding down. "I thought you looked familiar." I braced myself for the shift, The subtle change in demeanor people couldn't help once they connected me to my net worth. Instead, she shrugged and continued telling me about her latest photography project, documenting urban gardens. The relief I felt was immediate and profound. When the night ended, I found myself uncharacteristically nervous, phone in hand. "I'd like to see you again," I said simply. No grand gestures, no impressive offers, just the truth. She hesitated only briefly before taking my phone and typing in her number. "I'm free Wednesday evening," she said, "but fair warning, I don't do five-star restaurants for first dates." That Wednesday, I met Raya at a small cafe tucked between a bookstore and vintage record shop. I traded my usual tailored suit for jeans and a sweater, feeling strangely vulnerable without my typical armor. She arrived in a yellow sundress, camera bag slung over her shoulder, having come straight from a shoot. "This place makes the best chai in the city," she explained, leading me inside, where mismatched furniture and local art created an atmosphere nothing like the sterile luxury I typically frequented. She was right about the chai and about how much more you notice when you are not distracted by unnecessary opulence. The next morning, I had my assistant arrange for a delivery of wildflowers to her studio, not roses or orchids, but meadow flowers that reminded me of her unassuming beauty. I included a handwritten note, something I hadn't done in years. Her thank you came as a photograph, the flowers arranged on her windowsill, sunlight streaming through. No words needed. As days turned into weeks, I found myself consulting my calendar more often, rescheduling meetings that conflicted with our increasingly frequent evenings together. My mother called twice, reminding me about Chloe, the venture capitalist's daughter she'd been hoping I'd connect with. Each time, I changed the subject, unwilling to explain what I didn't fully understand myself. Everything changed on a perfectly ordinary night. We'd spent the evening walking through the city park, talking about everything and nothing, when a light rain began to fall. We ducked under the gazebo near the lake, Raya's face illuminated by the park lights, holding such openness that something inside me broke free. I kissed her there, raindrops falling around us, her hands gently framing my face. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't thinking about stock prices or board meetings or family expectations. I was simply present, heart-pounding, feeling truly alive in the arms of a woman who saw me, not my wealth, not my status, just me. Weeks with Raya stretched into months, and I discovered parts of myself I'd long forgotten existed. One Tuesday night, instead of attending the charity gala I'd RSVP'd to, I found myself in her small apartment kitchen, laughing as we attempted to make pasta from scratch. Flour dusted her cheeks, and tomato sauce bubbled on the stove, filling the space with a homey aroma I'd never experienced in my sterile penthouse with its rarely used professional kitchen. "You're hopeless at rolling dough," she teased, coming behind me to guide my hands. The simple intimacy of her touch meant more than any business victory I'd ever achieved. Our worlds were colliding in beautiful, unexpected ways. I took her to the Contemporary Art Museum's private showing, watching her engage with the artists not as a billionaire's date, but as a fellow creative discussing techniques and inspiration with genuine interest. Later that week, she introduced me to her favorite hidden spots in the city. A jazz club in a basement where we danced close in the dim light, a rooftop garden where local photographers gathered at sunset, a bookstore cafe where the owner knew her order by heart. "You know you're different when you're here," she observed one evening, her fingers intertwined with mine as we walked along the river. "More relaxed, more you." Her observation stayed with me, echoing in my mind during board meetings and investor calls. I began to recognize the mask I'd worn for so long, the persona crafted for success that had slowly consumed the man underneath. When my mother's birthday approached, bringing with it the unavoidable family dinner, I surprised everyone, including myself, by asking Raya to join me. My family's estate, with its manicured grounds and century-old legacy, had always been my fortress. Now, I was bringing in someone who challenged everything my parents valued. "They might not understand us," I warned her on the drive there. "Help them see what I see in you," she said, squeezing my hand. Dinner was exactly as tense as I'd anticipated. My father's questions probed Raya's background with thinly veiled judgment, while my mother maintained a polite chill. When my father mentioned the appropriate matches they'd always envisioned for me, something snapped. Raya is the best thing that's happened to me, I said firmly, reaching for her hand across the table. She sees me for who I am, not what I own. That's worth more than any business connection or social advantage. Later that night, standing in the garden where I'd played as a child, Raya wrapped her arms around me in a warm embrace that melted the tension from my shoulders. "Thank you for defending us," she whispered against my chest. Not everyone would have. 2 weeks later, I surprised her with tickets to a small coastal town known for its natural beauty and artist community. I'd bought out a beachfront cottage, simple but charming, with a deck overlooking the water. It was nothing like my usual luxury resorts, and everything we needed. We spent days walking barefoot on the sand, evenings watching the sunset with local wine, and nights talking until dawn under a blanket of stars. Raya shared her childhood dreams, her struggles building her business as a Black woman in a competitive industry, her fears of losing her creative vision to commercial success. I confessed my growing weariness with the emptiness of wealth without purpose, my fear that I'd never be loved for myself rather than my resources, my secret desire to use my platform for meaningful change. In that cottage, with the sound of waves as our constant companion, I realized I was falling in love, not just with Raya, but with the person I was becoming beside her. Reality crashed back into our world the moment we returned from our beach getaway. A photo of us walking hand in hand along the shore had somehow made its way to a gossip site. My phone exploded with notifications, and Raya's photography studio website crashed from sudden traffic. The headline was predictably sensationalist. Billionaire bachelor Ethan finds love with unknown Black photographer. At first, we laughed it off, but then came the whispers. My executive assistant forwarded emails from concerned board members questioning my recent distractions. At a charity event, I overheard someone wondering if Raya was strategic in her choice of boyfriend. Even Leo, who had been supportive, asked if things were getting serious with a tone that suggested caution. The breaking point came during a private dinner with Derek, my longest-standing business partner. As we discussed our upcoming expansion, he leaned in with practiced concern. "This photographer of yours," he said casually, swirling his bourbon, "quite the social climber, isn't she? From unknown to dating one of the richest men in the country. You might want to have legal draw up some protection for your assets." Something cold settled in my chest. "She doesn't care about my money," I replied stiffly. Derek's knowing smile pierced me. "They all say that until the ring is on the finger." That night, I made the mistake of keeping my distance when Raya called, letting doubt creep into the space between us. When we finally met for coffee 2 days later, she immediately sensed something had changed. "You're believing them, aren't you?" she asked quietly, eyes searching mine. "After everything we've shared, you still wonder if I'm with you for your money?" I couldn't find the right words to bridge the sudden chasm between us. My silence was answer enough. She placed her house key, the one I'd given her just weeks before, on the table and walked away, dignity intact but heart visibly shattered. 3 miserable days passed. I moved through meetings like a ghost, unable to focus on anything but the empty space where Raya had been. On the 4th morning, I stood at my floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city and finally saw clearly what I'd almost thrown away. What was all this worth? The empire, the influence, the wealth, if it cost me the one person who made me feel truly alive? I called Raya's closest friend, an art curator she'd introduced me to 2 months ago, and explained my plan. A week later, I stood nervously in an empty gallery space I had rented, surrounded by blown-up photographs, not just any images, but Raya's work, specially selected from exhibitions she'd been trying to get into prestigious galleries for years. When she walked through the door, confused by her friend's insistence that she come see a potential venue, her expression shifted from surprise to understanding. "You did this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper as she took in her photographs, displayed professionally. spotlighted with potential buyers and critics mingling in the background. Your talent deserves to be seen, I said simply. But more importantly, I was wrong. So wrong to let anyone make me doubt what we have. I stepped closer, risking everything on what my heart knew to be true. I love you, Raya, not for who you might be or what others think of us, but for exactly who you are. Her eyes filled with tears, but she stood her ground. I need to know that you'll fight for us every day, not just when it's convenient. I will, I promised, reaching for her hands. Nothing in my life has ever felt as right as loving you. When she stepped into my embrace, I felt the pieces of my world slide back into place. In that moment, holding her close, I knew with absolute certainty that I had found something worth more than all my billions, a love that was real, challenging, and completely unexpected. They say when you stop looking for love is exactly when it finds you. I never expected to find my heart's match at my best friend's sister's wedding. I certainly never imagined falling for someone so removed from my usual circles, someone who would challenge everything I thought I knew about success and happiness. Our journey hasn't been easy. We still face raised eyebrows and whispered comments. My family is slowly coming around, though my mother still occasionally mentions eligible socialites at family dinners, much to Raya's amusement. Her world has had to adjust too. Her art now commands higher prices, bringing both opportunities and accusations of selling out. But every morning when I wake up beside her, watching the sunrise paint patterns across her skin, I'm reminded of what truly matters, not the opinions of others, not the expectations that come with wealth and status, but the courage to recognize real love when it appears, even if it arrives in the most unexpected package. Today, Raya runs her expanded photography studio while I've restructured my companies to focus more on social impact. We travel often, sometimes to glamorous events, sometimes to remote villages where her camera documents stories that need telling. We're building something together that's bigger than either of us could have created alone. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever hesitated to follow your heart because of what others might think or say, remember this. The greatest risk isn't in loving someone different than who the world expects for you. It's in letting that love slip away because you're afraid to stand firm in your choice. Life is too short for regrets and too precious to live by others' rules. So the next time you're at a wedding, a party, or just going about your day, keep your heart open. Your unexpected love story might be waiting just across the room. If my journey has touched you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that love doesn't follow rules or expectations. Subscribe for more real stories that might just give you the courage to write your own. Because in the end, it's not about the billions in my bank account. It's about the priceless love I almost let slip through my fingers.